revolution of self-improvement, both in terms of body image and self-worth. With a subculture rich in history, these men have given rise to a world of intense competition, driving competitors to bring their bodies to the absolute physical peak.
It's very much a lifestyle. It's a 24/7 occupation at the highest level.
Explore the lives of these individuals and what it takes to be selected to be the best in the world, Mr. Olympia, and how that criteria has developed and changed over the years.
In bodybuilding, you can't tiptoe your way through a workout. You can't fake eating 6 and 7 meals a day. There's no way you can properly recover by training hard and then going out partying all night. It's all or none.
Defining what the best means and how it has evolved over the past 50 years.
I truly feel that my type of physique is gonna recharge the sport a little bit.
This is the evolution of bodybuilding. Before bodybuilding became a controlled sport, men of great strength were seen as curiosities rather than athletes. Audiences of circus acts and vaudeville shows were amazed to watch gargantuan men crush steel and lift unfathomably heavy items. And yet it was the spectacle of the show, not the physical prowess of the man, that was admired. But one of these young men would break the mold set forth by his predecessors and influence generations to come.
That mold was broken by Eugene Sandow, who was also a strength athlete, one of the strongest men in the world, but he had abs, delts, he was really defined, and although he started off as a strong man, there was such a sort of a focus on nobody's seen a build like this, and especially from the women really loved this guy, that then he started doing physique displays as part of his strength act.
Sandow's memorable musculature became a favorite among audiences in the late 1800s, and with his fame came great influence. Sandow was a shrewd businessman. He published several books on physical training and opened the Institute of Physical Culture in Britain. His fitness magazine, Bodybuilding, gave the future sport a name. But Sandow's long-lasting contribution to the bodybuilding world was the very first physique show, called The Great Competition. With a legacy that the entire bodybuilding world owes its success to, Sandow has been unforgettably remembered as the father of bodybuilding.
The real first bodybuilding contest was held at the Albert Hall. He organised it, didn't compete in it because he would have walked it. And the guys were judged. There was 12,000 people there to see it. One of the judges was Conan Doyle, who's the author of Sherlock Holmes. And then after that, physique contest started to spring up sporadically. Every few years, some of the best built man in the world.
Though it wasn't until 1940 that Joe Weider, along with his brother Ben, launched his magazine Your Physique, and a few years later created the International Federation of Bodybuilders. It was the improvement in self-image made possible by bodybuilding that earned Weider's praise.
Joe and Ben lived in the Jewish ghettos of Montreal, brought up in poverty. And they founded an industry, the bodybuilding and fitness industry. Now, we've all heard multiple stories of Jewish kids coming out of ghettos and getting into the movie industry or business, but these are established businesses. They were already going, and they got involved. They built the whole thing from nothing. You know, Joe ran his first magazine, produced his first magazine on his kitchen table on a mimeograph for $7. Ben traveled the world in the 50s to places. In those days, air travel wasn't as easy as it is now. He went to China and Russia. Here's a Jewish guy going to Egypt and you know, getting them in the bodybuilding fold. There was no religious or racial barriers, you know. So they were really unique in what they did.
The 1950s were drawing to a close. and the sport-turned-industry's focus to the next decade was about to shift almost universally to California. And who better to personify the iconic California lifestyle than the legend Larry Scott?
Yeah, Larry Scott was the personification of the California beach boy, even though he was born in Idaho and his blonde hair was dyed.
I met Joe in '61 through the magazines because I was appearing in the magazines, and he took an interest in me and started putting his arm around me and started seeing how he could help my career, just out of the goodness of his heart, and for his business too. You know, he was trying to get some pictures of the guys for his magazines, so it was a win-win situation.
The biggest magazine in those days, in the 30s and 40s, was Strength and Health, run by Bob Hoffman, who did bodybuilding but was more into weightlifting. He'd give them preference.
And at that time, there was a real struggle going on between Bob Hoffman and Joe Weider. And Bob Hoffman hated bodybuilders, but he was a powerlifting guy. And so he thought that was sissy stuff to be a bodybuilder, and you should be showing you how much you could lift and everything. So they didn't get along.
He used to hold contests, bodybuilding contests, but in conjunction with the weightlifting. And the weightlifting would take first, go on first. And the bodybuilders would not come on till midnight. They were like second-class citizens. Joe wanted to give bodybuilders the proper respect and forum.
I said, I want to be Mr. America. And he says, why don't you enter my contest? And it was the IFBB. And it was just starting, this idea. And I thought, I didn't say it to him, but I thought, who wants to win IFBB? Who knows IFBB? I want to win AAU, Mr. America. That's what I want. I said, no, Joe. I said, I got my heart set on AAU. He says, you can't win that. I says, why not? And he says, because that's fixed. He picks who wins that contest. And I said, well, I think I can do it. I still can. So, and I met Isaac Berger, who was a powerlifter. And he says, I know Bob Hoffman. He says, you got to meet him. You got to get to know him. You got to get in good with Bob Hoffman, or you'll never win his contest. So he said, at the next Mr. America, which was in Santa Monica, in which Joe Benda won it, he said, you come backstage after that contest, and I'll introduce you to Bob Hoffman. I said, all right, great. So we went backstage at the AU, and he took me up to Bob Hoffman. He says, Bob, there's someone here that wants to meet you. Larry Scott would like to meet you. And Bob Hoffman turned around, he looked at me, and he said, oh yes, I've seen him in other magazines. And turned his back on me. Isaac Berger walked off, and I'm standing there on stage. He's got his back turned to me, and just leaves me there. And I thought, I walked off. And I thought, here I'm talking to Joe Weider, and he's giving me all this help and encouragement and everything. He turned his back on me when I want to enter his contest. I said, that's it. I'm done with AAU.
Joe Weider, you know, he was a visionary, and he established the Mr. Olympia contest in 1965, and the reason he established it, there was two federations, and you could win Mr. America once, and that was it. You could win the IFBB Mr. Universe, but then there was nowhere for these guys to go. So he said, I want to create the ultimate bodybuilding competition, and he was having dinner with Larry Scott in 1964.
We were sitting there having dinner, and we started talking about, and I had just won the universe, and they said, we need to come up with a contest in which all the Mr. Universes can compete in. All the Mr. Americas, Mr. Universe can compete against one another to see who is the best in the world. I said, that's a great idea. Maybe we get Bill Pearl and these other guys that were my heroes to come in. I'd like to see how I would stand up next to them.
And Joe says, look, we're going to get a new competition, and what are you going to call it, Larry said. And they were drinking Olympia beer. This is a true story. And Joe said, well, call it Mr. Olympia.
Let's not call it that. That's a beer. Let's call it something that sounds health-producing or something, like Mr. Broccoli. That wasn't what I said. But something better than Olympia. Well, anyway, I lost. I voted on it. He says, no, Olympia. He says, think of Mount Olympus, like the grandeur of that. And I said, yeah, I can see that. And so we decided then there to call it Mr. Olympia.